I figured, guys, now would be a good time to do a state of the game video because, as you guys know, a few days ago, everyone found out when this season started that there's basically no elite wildcards available inside of Trophy Roads. You cannot get elite wildcards, and it's also the same way, guys, on ranked. On the rewards, you cannot get elite wildcards anymore, so pretty much your only way of getting elite wildcards at the moment, as things currently stand, is in the shop where you have to spend money. On top of that, guys, we have not had this tab working for a very long time. We haven't had global tournaments either in a few months. People have kind of patiently been awaiting their return. But with some of the negativity out of the way, we've had a lot of good happen in this game. Well, for one, the game is technically at its prime right now, debatably. So basically in this video, guys, I'm going to be yapping about the state of the game and also just kind of playing in the background. This is my first time doing this style of video. Usually I am opening things that I'm discussing about, but let me know if you guys enjoy this format. I saw Invader did a video like this about a week ago. It kind of inspired me a bit, so shout out to my boy Omar. And we'll go for a delivery here into Cannon. So I'm very pleased, of course, as a content creator with where the game is at the moment. I think Jinxie was a very big part of reviving the game, especially in certain countries in the West, especially like I think in the United States, Canada, it's even more noticeable, the revival of the game because of Jinxie, but it's worldwide as well. It's not even, guys, just English-speaking countries. I mean, in the Spanish community as well, you see the game is just doing absolutely phenomenal right now. But I would say, guys, despite the game doing amazingly, I've still been seeing some similar issues that we have still seen years ago where I feel like there's been a lack of communication and just awareness of what's going on, which I feel like kind of causes players to not feel trust towards, well, basically the game and what's going on. The elite wildcard removal is one of the biggest examples of that, where I just feel like they didn't let us know in advance. And I think that that's very problematic. I think that that was something they should have said the season before, so players had time to prep. And it kind of seems a little bit lackluster and a little bit rushed, I guess you could say, on their part. But it does make me think they certainly have something planned. Of course, there's a high chance it means that there are changes coming to things maybe like progression or even a whole update for that matter, because usually in, you know, the end of the year, there's the Q4 update because they usually do about 4 updates a year. So it would mean that we are kind of on track to be getting an update soon. So realistically, anything could happen, but I think the way that they did things recently with the removal of the elite wildcards was a very big mistake. And I do think, though, if we're talking about some positives, what I do really like is that they're going to be doing a TV Royale now every single month. I do really like that. I think that they are making some positive changes and realizing, like, hey, you know, the game is earning so much revenue now, we should be doing, you know, more content in TV Royale. So now they're doing it every single month instead of every other month. So that's a really good change that I'm happy about. And you know, I'm not paid to say this, guys. Like, I'm allowed to say whatever I want, but the community managers, guys, like Amelia, you know, Donald, Marco, all those guys, you know, I've met all of them. They're all great, great people. So anything, like, good, you know, bad that happens in the game, remember, it's never the community managers, usually, like, their fault or their decision. They're just kind of, you know, the faces of the game a lot of time in TV Royale. I think some people forget that. I kind of just wanted to throw that disclaimer in while we're defending all this stuff. This is kind of crazy. Oh my gosh. Oh, and I forgot to mention Maria as well. I almost forgot about her. But anyways, guys, back to what I was talking about. I feel like there's been just kind of a lack of communication and just new features. I think, obviously, and I just forgot about the champion change, so I don't know what I'm doing with my Archer Queen ability. I think sometimes when I'm really focusing on what I'm trying to say, my gameplay definitely suffers. We cannot be losing to someone that's under leveled. But anyways, guys, what I was going to say is I think something that's really been lacking is just the additions to the gameplay. And I think some people do think the game is getting a bit stale, and I'm a bit worried, right? Because whenever the game is at a peak, even though the game is doing really well right now, all good things in peaks come to an end. So I feel like the goal of Supercell and just the creators in general is to try to prolong this peak as much as possible, because we know it's not going to go on forever. We know Jinxie at some point is probably going to get bored of the game and, in a year or two move on to something else. So the goal should be trying to keep people like him as entertained as possible for as long as possible, which also means the casual players, because he's kind of, I would say, even though he's trying to get really good at the game, I would say he would know kind of what the casual players want, and would probably want similar things in the game. And I feel like there's just been a lot of focus recently on, of course, making money, which is understandable by them, but I would really like to see new gameplay features in the game and not so much focus on changing things like progression. They did all these things recently where there's the seasonal chests, and there's actually some confusion with that. I just think it was changes that never needed to be done. And in my opinion, guys, I can tell you from someone that has played the Chinese server, I got an account that I have on the Chinese server, and I can say for a fact, guys, the players versus environment game mode, that's a perfect example of something they could add into the game that casuals would love. I think it would bring new people into the game as well. I don't want to compare it to something like Plants vs. Zombies, for example, but I just think those types of games in general have a really mass appeal to different kinds of audiences, and I think it's why Merge Tactics was so successful. So I really think they should focus more on bringing stuff like that into the game, as well as, if they want to make money, instead of it being based on only progression, they could consider adding, for example, the Archer Queen skin that's on the Chinese server into the global server, as well as the Wizard, which I'm sure so many of you guys have seen maybe on Reddit or just other forms of social media, that basically they got just a kind of a completely different game going on in the Chinese server. And I'm not saying in the global server that we play on they have to implement every single thing, but if they see something as being successful and fun, I think they should definitely make it a priority bringing it to the main server, because, well, why not, right? I mean, I just think it's another way of playing the game. Like the Retro Royale, for example, a lot of people like 2v2 ladder. I think adding those additional game modes with Merge Tactics, I think they need to be doing more of that. And I do feel like they are trying harder, of course, with the TV Royale, right? They're doing that every month, and I have noticed they are doing updates more often. I like the fact that they're doing balance changes now pretty much every month, which is amazing, because I remember before it was, every other month. The game, kind of when it was at its lowest, like a couple years ago, it was every other month. So that's another good thing. I want to add that as another positive. But even though the balance changes have been more often recently, which I really like, I still feel like they need to do more playtesting for the broken cards that they release, or them being completely, horrendous. I actually think I got to give credit where it's due. The Evolve Royal Hogs might actually be one of the most balanced evolutions they've introduced in a very long time. And I think a big part of that is because they made it 2 cycles. They learned their lesson from the Evo Baby Dragon. So as you guys can see, I'm trying to be honest and fair. I'm trying to say good and bad right now and be as unbiased as possible. I just think what I'm trying to say is, I think because they are, even though they are doing more, what I'm trying to say is, and apologies, I'm a bit sick, so my commentary is not going to be perfect probably. Even though they are doing more, and I think I noticed that and a lot of other people, I think with the revenue they're making, you could make the argument that they could probably be putting in even more effort, especially with things like communication. And I think there's just certain things that don't seem to make sense, like global tournaments not coming back. And this elite wildcard change, I feel like it's just these types of things are mistakes. I feel like that should be avoided. I mean, if this was going to be done, or if they're planning on making some changes, maybe it would have been better to let people know in advance, unless this was just a last-minute decision, because it's now been a few days and we still haven't had an explanation. So I feel like people are just kind of getting more and more anxious waiting. People are very afraid because there's no reassurance what's going to happen, and because of what's happened in the past with progression changes and updates, people have kind of been, you could say they've been either pessimistic or, instead of optimistic, maybe cautiously optimistic, right? Because the game is in a good spot. But I just think, guys, this is not the time for Clash Royale to be making any sort of mistakes with the game being at its prime right now. Because I think that it's more important than ever with Jinxie playing the game now. But not only that, guys, also with the World Finals being over, that was one of the most hyped things in the game. Like, I think whenever the World Finals happen, there's a wave of hype, especially for players that are a bit more competitive or just people that really enjoy watching it. But now that that's over, we're kind of getting towards the end of the year now. I think, they really need to be focusing on bringing new content inside of this game and stop, I guess, obsessing so much over progression, because if they continue to keep all the players playing the game right now and even bring in new players through, more game modes that a lot of people would play, I think that's really what they need to be focused on, because if the amount of people playing this game still play it a long time from now, then they're going to be chilling. They're going to be making the amount of money they've been making these last few months for like another year or two. But if they instead keep making tweaks or, doing things that would be considered greedy, that's when it could be risky. And I think the communication just needs to be better as well. But at the moment, I'm just hoping that whatever change that they made to these elite wildcards ends up being a good one. I think that, this hype, I think everyone wants it to stay this way. And I just think they're continuing to still make the mistakes from the past. And I think that that's the main thing, I guess, that I want to be sorted out going forward. I just want them to be more like upfront with the community about the decisions they're making, instead of kind of leaving people hanging and doing things that are kind of completely unexpected. So I guess that's kind of where I'm going to leave things. Like, this elite wildcard situation definitely has been a complete disaster. It's been one of the most negative things about the game recently, as well as like things like Royal tournaments being removed, just things that really need to be communicated with the players a lot better, in my opinion. And it's like with the Royal tournaments, there hasn't been clear communication. Are they even coming back? We're starting to get to the point now where it's like, we don't even think now that our global tournament's just never coming back at all. Nobody knows. Everyone's kind of left scratching their head. So the game is hype. It's trendy. It's very popular. But in terms of longevity and just changes for the free-to-play community, that's where maybe there could be some improvements made. But let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below if you enjoy this style of video. And if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe. You can use credit code BOSS to support me in any Supercell game. And thanks again until next time, guys.